I never thought I'd be the type to cheat. I've been married to my husband Mark for 8 years. We have a son, Ethan, and our life was pretty picture perfect on the surface. Nice house in the suburbs, stable jobs. I work as a marketing consultant, and he owns a small construction firm. He was the best man one could ever wish for, and we were happy together. I'd never imagined the beautiful picture we had painted together for years would end up getting soiled because of me. It all started when Mark's company was facing a big crisis and was at the verge of going bankrupt. If there was one thing I loved most about my husband, that would be his undying sense of responsibility. He always felt obligated to my family and his, which in a way was admirable, but at some point painful. He would always reach out to help anyone in need first, but when he was the one going through something, he'd always shut everyone out and shoulder everything on his own. Each time he did that, it made me feel he didn't see me as someone he could depend on, or maybe I just wasn't enough for him. I'd always complain about it, and he'd apologize, stating he didn't want me going through any more stress, and my duties at home, coupled with my job and our family's affairs, was already too much for me to handle, and he didn't want his problems to weigh me down more. In the end, he'd make me see his problem as nothing, and surprisingly, he'd always find his way around everything. My husband Mark had invested in a new project with his friend, but they had gotten scammed by one of the floormen, and that incident had caused a slash in his company. Things had gotten bad and hectic, and he was at the verge of losing his company. I had offered to help him, but Mark kept assuring me he had everything in control, but nothing got better. Eventually, he started getting obsessed with saving his business, and then things slowly took a different turn between us. We rarely had dinner together anymore, and he'd always leave early to catch up with emergency meetings. Things went that way for a while, and slowly it got to a point he was barely home. He'd be out on business trips, and when he finally managed to come home, he'd be too worn out to spend more time with us, let alone have time to play with our son like before. I tried to understand and support him in the little way I could, but things didn't get any better. Our weekly dates and family outings got cut out, and family vacations every summer were no longer possible, and to make matters worse, things had gotten stale in the bedroom too. Mark was always tired from work to even get his dick up, and I felt invisible, like just another item on his to-do list. It was really suffocating, and what made it more difficult was the fact that I couldn't complain. I couldn't blame anyone. Mark was really trying, and I could see he was giving his best, but I couldn't still help it. I felt empty. Then my life became dictated, and it seemed I was running on a daily routine. Wake up, make breakfast, drop Ethan off at school, and sometimes pick him up, my job, and tuck Ethan to bed at night. My life lost taste, and everything seemed boring until one afternoon last September. Everything changed. I had thought at first that finally fate had given my life another shot, with happiness unknown to me, that it was actually playing games with me. As usual, I went to pick Ethan up from school, and there he was, Mr. Alex, the new 5th grade teacher. He was tall, had an athletic build with curly dark hair. His dark, dreamy eyes and this easy, charming smile helplessly made my knees weak each time I saw it. That afternoon, he was helping the kids with their backpacks while exchanging comments with the parents that flocked around him. I guess I wasn't the only one smitten by him, as other women would always stick around him trying hard to engage him with annoying conversations. I could tell he was uncomfortable, but he was able to hide his detest well, and it really spiked my curiosity. He was laughing at something one of them said while he spun around in the process, and coincidentally, our eyes met as I approached. I was so lost in his smile, and I felt this electric spark I hadn't felt in years. My heart suddenly started racing hard, and I could feel my tummy twist. I immediately looked away to hide my blushing face, and I didn't want him to suspect I had been staring at him the whole time. I didn't want him to think I was that easy, and of course I wouldn't want to take the first step. I could still feel his eyes on me, and it made me even more flustered that I started looking around. I was so confused I didn't know what to do anymore. Should I just pretend and greet him? I asked myself continuously, as I tried so hard not to meet his eyes. Luckily, Ethan came to my rescue when he ran to me, wrapping his hands around me. I smiled sweetly at my son and slowly walked him to my car, as I didn't want to waste any more time, afraid I might get exposed. But no matter how hard I tried to ignore everything, I just couldn't help myself, and I ended up asking my little boy about him. It was my first time seeing him, and I didn't know his name, so I had to go through a lot of stress describing and giving details to get my boy to figure out who I was asking about. Ethan told me his name and he raved about Alex nonstop on our drive home. I could see the spark in his eyes as he talked about his teacher, and it made me even more curious about Alex, and I couldn't stop thinking about him. That night, I fantasized about him while my husband Mark snored beside me. Over the next few weeks, taking my son Ethan to school and bringing him home became solely my responsibility, and unlike before, I had always seen it as extra stress and would sometimes nag Mark about it, but now, each time Mark offered to, I'd stop him saying I could handle it and he shouldn't worry about our son and focus more on his business. He'd kiss me on my forehead and apologize for putting me through so much, and as always, he'd promise to make it up to me. Little did he know he was actually doing me a favor, and being around our son was the only excuse I had to see my new crush and my newfound happiness. When I drop Ethan off at school, I'd always hang around secretly stealing peeps on Alex, and even while at work, I'd always be looking at the time wishing it ran faster so I could be at Ethan's school soon, just so I could see Alex again. It was just a harmless crush in the beginning, and I'd never thought it would result in something more, something that should never have happened. Things got more complicated between Alex and I when I decided to take my fantasy to the next level. I had always kept things low by only watching him from a distance, exchanging eye contact and subtly smiling when the chance came, and that was it. But things got messy one afternoon. I was at my job when my phone rang, and it was a call from an unknown number. When I answered, I immediately recognized the voice. It was Alex's, Ethan's teacher. I was surprised because that was actually the first time speaking with him. Aside from the pleasantries we exchanged when I dropped or picked Ethan up from school, we had never had the chance to talk. I had gone ahead and asked him how he got my number like a teenage girl getting courted by her stalker, which was so stupid of me, and his response only made me realize I was hopeless. He told me he had gotten my number from Ethan's record in school, which was, of course, an obvious reason. I mean, anyone could have figured that out, but I was too dumb to even think. I was far too gone with my crush thingy that I had forgotten I was even married. Alex told me he called because of a little incident that happened in school that day, and that Ethan had gotten into a fight with a few kids, and the parents' attention was needed. I was busy at that moment and was going to ask him to call my husband, Mark. But then my delusion kicked in, and I thought he just might have used the incident as an excuse to get us to meet. Kids fight all the time. It wasn't anything surprising, so why did I have to go? I asked myself. I was convinced Alex had other intentions, and I couldn't let that chance pass by, so I immediately suspended everything I was doing. Then I quickly hurried to school. Instead of feeling worried for my son, Ethan, I was driving to my son's school, excited by the fact that I was given another chance to see Alex. Just hearing his voice over the phone made me feel so happy, and I just couldn't wait to lay my eyes on him. When I got to Ethan's school, I took my time to fix my makeup and wore my best smile before hurrying inside. After the situation got settled between us parents, I had turned to leave when Alex asked me to spare him a few more minutes, just the two of us. My heart tickled from joy as I realized I was right all along. It was indeed what I thought it was. I could see the jealousy in the eyes of the other ladies who couldn't stop glancing at us as they left the office. My mind started racing with questions as I wondered what his reason for asking me to stay was and how I was going to react if he confessed that he liked me or anything. My imagination grew wild and I couldn't stop myself from smiling. But my hopes got crushed the second he started talking about my son, Ethan. For a second, I thought he had finally noticed me, but I was wrong. We talked briefly about Ethan's progress in school and his weaknesses as well, and it was almost like I wasn't going to get what I came for, so I decided to take the first step, and somehow I was able to twist the conversation from my son, making Alex the topic of our chat. It started when I asked if he could be my son's private tutor, and one conversation led to another, and I got to know a bit about him. His teaching challenges, his passion for literature, and I even got to know he was an English major before switching to education. Our conversation went from formal to casual, and I learned he was single, fresh out of a bad breakup, and there was undeniable chemistry. A knock on the door from his colleague brought me back to my senses, and I suddenly recalled my son was waiting for me. In a rush, I thanked him and said goodbye, but he offered to walk me outside. We got to Ethan, and next, we were standing outside the school park, beside my car, facing each other. I had tried to sound as natural as possible when I thanked him for agreeing to be Ethan's tutor and for his time, but he just flashed me a smile saying I had already thanked him countless times for that already. I could feel my cheeks flush from the slight embarrassment, and it felt like he could already see through me. I had turned to take my leave when Alex asked me to have lunch with him the next day when I came to get Ethan. I could feel my heart drum from excitement, and I instantly accepted. It was an opportunity I had been waiting for, so I couldn't let it slip. I didn't stop to think about the consequences either, or why my son's teacher would be asking me out for lunch. The next day after dropping Ethan off at school, I had quickly gone shopping because I didn't like any of the clothes I had at home. I got new clothes, and it was completely different from my usual dressing style. I wore tighter jeans which groped my body, aligning my figure well, and a low-cut top that showed my breast curve. Also, I literally bathed in my perfume. I can't recall the number of times I spun around my mirror for a confirmation that I was hot enough before leaving to pick Ethan up from school. Alex had also finished his work for the day, and all three of us went out together for lunch. While we ate together on the table, I couldn't silence that voice in my head that kept complimenting how good the three of us looked together, and like a fool, I pictured Alex as my husband in place of Mark. I can still recall the big smile I had on my face as we ate together, and how hard I'd laugh at anything he said, even if it wasn't funny. After a few minutes, Ethan was done with his food and had left to join other kids in the PlayStation. It was finally our moment alone. There was a brief silence between us, and I just couldn't meet his eyes. I feel so ashamed to admit I was acting all coy and silly in front of a man that wasn't even my husband. I had tried to swallow my food, but suddenly choked on it. I quickly reached for my glass of water, but at the same time, Alex had reached for it as well, which caused our hands to collide in the process. My heart stopped for a second, my eyes meeting his and the way he looked at me. Yeah, he felt it too. We stared at each other, our eyes and shy smile doing all the talking before he slowly redrew his hands and then offered a not-so-sincere apology. I could feel my body itching for him at that moment, but I wasn't so sure he felt the same, or maybe I was just deluding myself. I decided to try my luck. I needed to confirm if Alex felt the same way for me. We went our separate ways after lunch, and I couldn't stop thinking of ways to find out if Alex saw me as a woman. A thought came to mind, and immediately Mark came home. I decided to put the plan in action. Ethan was struggling a bit with reading comprehension, so I played it up to Mark. Honey, Ethan's teacher is amazing. He's young, energetic, and really connects with the kids. What if we hired him for private tutoring? It could give Ethan that extra boost. I had asked Mark about this on purpose during dinner because I knew Ethan would be present too, and he would be so excited about the idea, especially since it was about Alex, and that would make the plan a success. And just as I thought, Ethan, hearing this, excitedly agreed, and immediately started pressing Mark to agree. Mark, always the supportive dad, couldn't help but smile at Ethan's cheerful face, and he immediately agreed without a second thought. He even handled the arrangements, offering Alex a generous hourly rate despite the fact that his company was still recovering and was overly kind to let him have the tutor session at our home. Just exactly what I needed. Mark wasn't the kind to slack behind, especially when it was about me or our son. He was always ready to go miles just to make us happy and comfortable, and I had just capitalized on that fact to get Alex to be around more often. Soon, Alex started coming over twice a week for home lessons in our living room. It was a perfect cover. The seduction started subtly. I'd offer Alex coffee during sessions, lingering in the kitchen to chat while Ethan worked on assignments. I'd wear yoga pants that hugged my curves, bend over a little too much when picking up toys. I was doing everything and anything just to get Alex's attention. As time went on, the days for home lessons increased to about 4 times a week. I convinced Mark saying Ethan needed extra attention, and Alex was kind enough to teach him without charging us extra. Mark didn't see anything wrong with it, and just went with the flow. One evening, Mark was out late at a job site, and after Ethan's lesson, I invited Alex to stay for a glass of wine. Just to discuss Ethan's progress, I said. I had tucked Ethan to bed, and we ended up on the couch, talking for hours. I leaned in, touched his arm, and before I knew it, we were kissing. It was passionate and forbidden. His hands were exploring me like Mark hadn't in ages. We didn't go all the way that night, but it was the start. I kept reminiscing about it the whole night, and I was just so happy. He didn't reject my advances, which only confirmed he felt the same way, and it only meant my plan was a success. From there, the affair exploded. We'd sneak quickies in the guest bathroom during tutoring sessions if Mark stepped out, but mostly we met elsewhere to avoid risks at home. Hotels became our go-to. I'd book cheap rooms at the Holiday Inn on the edge of town, paying cash when possible. I couldn't risk using my card as Mark, and I both shared the same account, and I wasn't going to risk explaining anything to him. Motels for dirtier, spontaneous hookups, like the seedy one off the highway where we'd role-play teacher-student fantasies. For weekends, when I could swing it, pretending they were girls' trips or work retreats, we'd take short trips, a spa weekend in the mountains that was really us holed up in a cabin, fucking like rabbits, and hiking during the day to build alibis with selfies I'd later edit him out of, not in all but the ones that I'd show my husband. Then, hiding the rest on my phone to drool over when I was alone. Then, I believed that hiding it from Mark was easier than I thought, because excuses flowed naturally. I'd either say I had a meeting with a client and I'd leave to have dinner with Alex, and we'd always end our dinner dates with a hotel room service. I was boldly playing my husband, and he trusted me just too much that he never doubted me. One night I enjoyed Alex's company and sex way too much that I lost track of time, and Mark got home before me. I lied my car broke down and I had a hard time getting home. Mark was really concerned that he got me a new car the next day, claiming he was so worried and didn't want anything like that to happen again, especially that late at night, as it was too dangerous to be out alone at that time. I could feel the guilt eating me up. Mark loved me just the same, but I was no longer the same anymore. But still I couldn't stop. I kept meeting with Alex, and we even got bolder. I started sleeping out on nights I was sure Mark wouldn't be home, leaving my kid all alone with a babysitter, a stranger. Mark would kill me if he found out, so I was careful not to get exposed. I gave her an instruction to only watch Ethan until I got back, and she should never be seen by anyone. So I'd leave after Ethan fell asleep, and I was sure he'd be asleep till morning, so he wouldn't see the babysitter, and I made sure to be home before he woke up, so no one would suspect anything. One night, Alex and I had planned to go out of town together for a concert. It was Alex's favorite idols that were performing, and I had promised to go with him to watch the show. He was literally waiting for me, but Ethan just wouldn't sleep that night. He kept clinging to me and just wouldn't let me go. I had lost my mind completely for Alex that I had no choice but to feed my kid sleeping pills disguised as vitamins, just so I could have my way. I didn't feel any ounce of regret as I did that. After, I rushed out, hugging another man and leaving my child at home to go on a trip with my affair. After the concert, we lodged in a hotel in the area, and that's where we had another passionate night together. I had bought toys online, so Alex and I had experimented with them together that night. I was so shameless, and it never crossed my mind that what I was doing was so wrong. My affair with Alex continued, and I had even gotten a separate credit card for bookings. One I claimed was for work expenses and stash receipts in my purse or glove compartment. I was really cautious not to get caught, so I'd delete our texts obsessively and use burner apps for calls, and always had a cover story ready. The thrill made it addictive, plus the secrecy, the risk, and the way Alex made me feel desired and alive. We'd sex chat at night, and I'd boldly do it, not caring about Mark, who was sleeping beside me. And sometimes I'd sneak off to the bathroom to send nudes of myself each time Alex asked for it. It lasted for months. Throughout this period, I convinced myself I could keep it going forever. Mark was clueless, he was busy with work, and our sex life had picked up a bit because I was hornier from the affair. I was fearless sleeping with both men, and it seemed I had everything under control until I was proven wrong. I got caught, and my sins started pouring out bit by bit. The first sign of my doom struck when the babysitter got caught by Mark. I had gone out as usual with Alex, leaving Ethan alone with the babysitter. Ethan had a mild fever, but I just couldn't cancel my plans with Alex. So I fed him some medicine and called the babysitter over. I had left his phone with him, telling him to call me if he needed me, but Ethan had called Mark instead. I came home to meet my husband in the living room with Ethan sleeping on his lap and our babysitter on her knees, trembling in fear. The second I saw the picture in front of me, I knew I was in a mess, but as usual I had my cover up. I lied to Mark that I had an emergency at work that I couldn't cancel, so I had to leave Ethan with a babysitter. I was lucky the babysitter had told Mark that was her first visit, so it was easier to blend my lies. Mark exploded, stating I should have called him instead, and he would have come home to look after Ethan, instead of choosing to leave the child with a stranger. I immediately decided to play victim by using his busy work against him, saying he was always busy, and I didn't want to bother him. Mark felt guilty, and his anger slowly subsided. He paid the babysitter off, and I was able to dodge the bullet. But then things got more difficult for me. Mark suddenly started becoming more and more available at home, and it made it more difficult to spend nights out with Alex. Even our daily meeting became difficult, and we could only meet on days I got the chance to pick Ethan up from school. That was a chance to call everything quits, and escape getting caught and live my life peacefully, but I refused. I couldn't cut Alex out of my life, so I'd lie to Mark that I was going to stop by my friend's place briefly before I came home. When I got to my friend's place, I left Ethan with her and sneaked out to meet Alex. We met up in hotels, and each time we did, I'd make sure we'd have intimate moments like my life depended on it, till I was weak on my legs because I wasn't sure when next we'd meet again. All the fun and excitement blurred one night. I had just returned home as usual from my friend's place, but Alex's cuddle, only to meet Mark preparing dinner. I was surprised because ever since we got married, Mark had rarely made dinner for us. My mind started skipping as I tried to think if I had missed anything. It wasn't my birthday, neither was it his, or Ethan's either. It wasn't our anniversary, so what was the occasion? I was so lost and confused with all the romantic treatment. Mark immediately asked me to freshen up while he got the table ready, and he asked Ethan to go to bed too, because he needed alone time with just the two of us. The way they both exchanged signals together before Ethan went running cheerfully to his room confirmed to me that he had been aware his dad wanted to surprise me. I couldn't believe the kid hadn't let it slip, and I could understand his happiness as Mark and I had been so occupied that a date like this was so rare between us. Immediately, I concluded that that was Mark being all sweet, and he just missed us and wanted us to be together like before. So I went upstairs, freshened up, and wore my sexiest nightwear. One Alex got me on one of our trips. We sat down together and had dinner with big smiles, and I swear I had no idea I was cooked. Halfway through dinner, Mark slammed his cutlery to the table, and his eyes darkened. His expression changed drastically, as if a mask had just been taken off. "We need to talk," he said calmly, but no matter how cool he tried to be, I could sense something was up. My heart started beating fast, and my mind was spinning as I tried to figure out what it was about, but I played it cool. Then he pulled out a folder, hotel receipts I'd forgotten in my car. He'd been cleaning it as a nice gesture. Also, crumpled motel coupons from my purse, and confirmations emailed to an account I'd linked by mistake. I opened my mouth to lie my way out as always, but suddenly got dumbstruck when Mark threw a box at me. Inside was a pair of Alex's boxers I'd hidden in my gym bag. I was going to return it, but I had gotten careless and ignored it. I had no clue it was with Mark the whole time. I looked at my husband with fear in my eyes, and I could feel my body trembling as he rose to his feet. I was doomed. I had to survive somehow, so I tried to gaslight him, saying that he was overreacting, and those receipts are from work trips I had told him about before. And the underwear must be his or Ethan's? And then, I added, "You're paranoid because you're never home." He didn't speak instantly, rather, he just stared at me stone-faced before finally exploding, yelling that he was disgusted with the fact that I was still trying to insult him and not willing to admit to my affair. Mark thundered in a rage, stating he had doubted it when his friend called to tell him he saw his wife check into one of his hotels with a stranger. He only stormed over after the friend forwarded pictures of Alex and I together. The outfit in the photo was the exact same one I had worn when I left the house that day. He had still doubted and still clung to his love and trust for me, only to be utterly disappointed when he arrived at the hotel and realized it was all true. I was holding hands with the person I claimed was our son's tutor, and we were walking into an elevator together, a card key in my hands. He wanted to confront me about it then and there, but he was certain I'd lie about it and try to cry my way out, so he had to find evidence that I couldn't deny. He confessed he was actually the one that paid the bill for me and Alex at the hotel that day, and he had hired a private investigator to do the rest for him. I could feel my blood dry as I vividly recalled the one time I had gone to pay as usual, after spending time together with Alex, only to realize someone had already paid for us. I had thought it was Alex and had not suspected a thing, not knowing it was my husband. It turned out that Mark had been aware of my affair for a long while, and that was his reason for his frequent stays at home and the sudden sweetness he had been showing me and Ethan for weeks now. I had thought business was doing well, and he was now back to being his usual self, but he had played me so well I didn't suspect a thing. He said he had been gathering all my hotel receipts, and as if getting caught wasn't enough, Mark started reading out the receipts and names of hotels Alex and I had been playing at, loudly with bloodshot eyes. He punished me in the coldest way when he asked me to explain myself without missing any details. I panicked, and out of fear of what he might do to me if I dared to lie again. I confess every detail right there at the table, dates, locations, what we did. He asked if Alex's sex was that good that I was willing to sacrifice our marriage and family for it. I sobbed through it, describing the hotels, rough sex against the wall, him tying me up with cheap scarves, all the role-playing where I was the naughty student, him spanking me until I begged, the trips, outdoor sex by the lake, leaving bruises I had to explain. It was humiliating, him forcing me to relive it while he recorded on his phone for the lawyers. Then he poured the wine down the sink and said that I should pack my things and that I was going to sleep in the guest room until the divorce papers were ready. And then he walked out on me. I sat there crying and asking myself where it all went wrong. How was I going to explain to Ethan? I kept thinking of ways to fix everything and save myself, but no matter how hard I calculated, it was going anywhere. Mark was really done with me. Update. The punishment didn't stop there. After Mark exposed me at dinner that night, he completely ignored me. He treated me like I was invisible and wouldn't even let me go close to him, even though we were still under one roof. He cut me off financially after that night, changed the passwords on our joint accounts, and canceled my cards. The next step was our son, Ethan. He knew it was going to be difficult to cut me out of Ethan's life, so he told Ethan a sanitized version of everything that had happened, telling him that Mom and Dad needed space. I could hear my child cry from the hallway, and I felt my whole world collapse as I realized how much pain my madness had brought on. Not just Mark, but my son too. I had gone over to Mark's room that night, got on my knees, and started begging. I told him I couldn't bear it anymore and I needed him and Ethan by my side. I even threatened that I was going to die without them because I couldn't go on without them. I went as far as saying I understood he hated me, but he should stop being difficult, and we could always fix our problem for the sake of our child. I think that's where Mark lost his mind. He charged at me, grabbing me by my neck, and threw me to the ground. He roared, angrily pouring out all the pent-up anger he had kept inside for weeks, while rampaging through the room, breaking anything he got in contact with. I feared for my life that I ran out of the room, but Mark chased after me. He ordered me to leave his house, kicking me out that night, not caring how much I begged and wailed. I could see my son watching the whole scene from the balcony upstairs, and I couldn't do anything but cry. I left shamelessly that night and went over to Alex. I was going to tell him about my situation, but I met him in a big fight with a lady. I recognized her from a photo I saw in Alex's wallet one time, and he had told me she was his sister. Both of them stopped fighting when they saw me, and I could see the lady stare at me with disgust. Before I knew what was coming, the lady attacked me, accusing me of sleeping with her husband. I was already weak from my fight with Mark, only to get hit by another shocking news that Alex was already married, and the lady he had told me was his sister was actually his wife. I got beaten up badly and ended up getting rushed to a hospital. When I regained consciousness, Alex was gone as well as the crazy woman. I found out later Mark had sent pictures of my affair with Alex to his wife abroad, and she had returned to face Alex, and I just had to walk in at that moment. I had cried so hard as I realized how big of a fool I was. I had lost what was real for something that wasn't real, and everything I thought I had were nothing but lies. A sin I painted as happiness. I went back home to my parents, but soon had to move out as I couldn't stand my mom's nagging and insults. I ended up in a crappy apartment, one I had managed to get with the help of my sister, and just when I thought I could finally have peace, a package was delivered to my doorstep, and inside it contained divorce papers and legal notice that Mark was suing me too. He had claimed my affair had caused him and his son mental and emotional damage, and he was suing me for damages. I couldn't believe what was happening, and over the weeks, Mark dragged out the divorce proceedings deliberately, making me attend mediation where he'd calmly list my infidelity, forcing me to admit it in court in front of our families. There was lots of evidence supporting all his claims, so he got primary custody of Ethan, the house, and most assets. Turns out he'd documented everything meticulously. The worst was when he accidentally leaked details of my affair to our social circle, or so he claimed, turning friends against me. I lost my job when the news about my divorce and affair broke out, and now I've become the center of a small-town gossip. Alex had resigned from school and had ghosted me the second everything blew up. I heard later that he had left the country with his wife to live with his family. The divorce has been finalized, and now I'm all alone, broke, and worst, Ethan barely speaks to me during visits. Mark is dating someone new, a sweet woman from his gym. I regret it all, but confessing here feels like the only way to unburden. The thrill I had felt when I was with Alex is gone, and I'm left alone to suffer the consequences of my actions, and I have no one but myself to blame. You can all call me names if you want, but please, no judgments. I've judged myself enough.